So the December 2024 exam season is behind us, but did it bring joy to ACCA students? Stay tuned to find out what was in the December 2024 ATX UK exam and how many of the things I thought would come up did, and also what the surprises were. So let's get into it then. Now in section A for ethics, most students reported an ethical issue around an error or a refund from HMRC. This was actually similar to what many students got in September, so I was surprised to hear this, given that there are other ethical scenarios such as conflict of interest, tax avoidance versus tax evasion that hadn't been tested as recently. It should still have been a fairly straightforward 4 to 5 marks for most students to pick up here. Now question 1 was, as I expected, split into business tax and personal tax, with the business side of things being focused on a group situation. Some students reported it being a consortium in their question, which I had flagged as an area to focus on in my pre-exam video. Others got a different group structure set up, but each was dealing with trading losses. We didn't see a close company set up in question 1, which was the other possibility I thought we could have. As I mentioned in the previous video, research and development relief is changing next year, so we did, as I suggested, see this getting tested in December under the current rules. We saw intangible assets being examined in question 1 in September, so I didn't expect to see that again, but here it was, a patent and rollover relief on that, as well as rollover relief on a building. I suspect students will have found the building a bit more bread and butter than the patent. Now, some students did get an element of transfer pricing and some CFC situations, which I had mentioned in the pre-December video, so hopefully students found those elements okay. My hope that something around permanent establishments overseas didn't seem to appear though. From the personal tax side of things in question 1, I was surprised to see PRR and EMI being tested again, as students reported this being tested in September, but the whole range of the TX and ATX syllabuses can be tested, and because we're dealing with scenarios where multiple tax issues are happening at once, if it makes sense for the scenario for these areas to come up again, then they do. Many students reported finding section A more straightforward than section B in December, which is unusual to hear. In section B, many students got the mixture of CGT and IHT that I expected to see. As I said before, it doesn't come up in every exam where we've got them in the same question together, but it does happen fairly frequently because these two taxes often apply to the same types of asset or disposal. Now, in terms of capital gains tax, there's sure to be a couple of at least capital gains tax reliefs being examined across the paper. In September, we saw private residence relief, gift relief being examined, and so although, as I said in the pre-December exam video, there's no rule that says they couldn't be examined in a subsequent diet, I did think it was going to be more likely that you were going to see business asset disposal relief and rollover relief come up in December, as these are frequently examined. So, what happened in December then? Well, we saw PRR come up again, but this time in question 1. And some students did report getting business asset disposal relief. Most students got rollover relief, but in question 1 rather than in question 2 or 3 alongside other CGT issues. And that was because rollover relief in the December exam was being examined under the company perspective, not the individual's perspective, so it made sense for the rollover relief to be in question 1 there. Now, my wildcard suggestion for CGT was something to do with SEIS or EIS reinvestment relief, as these are new topics at Advanced Tax and they didn't come up in September, but it appeared that it was a wildcard suggestion indeed. We saw EIS relief come up in question 1 for some, but on the income tax relief side of things. We didn't see shares being examined under a takeover or liquidation in this exam sitting, so those are two scenarios I'd certainly be looking at for March perhaps. From an inheritance tax point of view in December, we saw students getting tested on the death estate and quick succession relief with a husband and wife situation, and then the assets being passed on again to their daughter. I had flagged up the use of QSR in the pre-exam video. We didn't see BPR come in anywhere. It is one of the more commonly examined reliefs, but didn't seem to fit in with this particular scenario. My ideas around VAT were pretty good, as we saw land and buildings feature, as well as the option to tax and VAT on imports and exports for some students. I think that what will have been more challenging though will have been the VAT implications on the incorporation of a business that we saw in December. I didn't hear any reports of pensions coming up, which surprised me, but I guess all of this goes to show how ATX is a real mixed bag of topics. It's very scenario driven, it is not formulaic. So what can we learn from this sitting of the ATX exam? Expect the unexpected. Smaller topics like PRR and EMI, which had been tested in the previous sitting, featured again. Many students found Section B harder than Section A, which is unusual at ATX. Some reported more requirements to do than usual, or lots of marks focused on one area. With such a vast syllabus as ATX, there is almost a countless number of ways that the examiner can put together a paper, and students need to realise that the exam will not look like something they have seen before, but that does not mean that passing is impossible. You need to put yourself in the shoes of a tax advisor who's going to have clients coming to them with a number of different random issues, and it's your job to work through the puzzle and plan out what is the most relevant content from the syllabus to the situation in hand. We've also learnt that just because something came up in the last exam doesn't mean it won't feature again so quickly. It absolutely can, and it certainly does sometimes. We learnt that Section A might not be as bad as you fear on the day, and in fact might just have some topics in it that suit you better. So you must make sure that you practice those larger 50-mark questions. We learnt that the ethics marks in the exam are some of the most predictable marks you can get, and so you must ensure you have practice questions on this area and know how to tie the issues back to the Code of Ethics competencies and to think about your position as an advisor as opposed to your client's day-to-day operations. Now, if you sat your exam in December, all you can do now is wait to see what January brings, and I do hope it's good news. And if you're yet to sit ATX and are here looking for some tips and advice, then I really do hope that this has been useful for you.